Well, team, it's been a long time, but it's gotta be done. It's time to revisit an old friend and see how he is doing. Patrick S Tomlinson, a writer, a political firebrand, a comedian, and all around, well, here's how I've described him in the past. Pat Tomlinson is a comedian. A comedian who couldn't take a joke made at his expense after he threw out a shitty joke about Norm Macdonald. Pat Tomlinson is a science fiction author, trying to tell stories of the future when he doesn't even have a basic understanding of the present and how the internet works. Pat Tomlinson is a defender of women whom he will randomly throw into a stupid essay he's writing, even though they have nothing to do with the conflict, getting misogyny involved, just in hopes that it will bring some sympathy to his dogshit crusade. Pat Tomlinson is bad at everything he tried to do here. Pat Tomlinson is a bloated, failed comedian and completely unknown sci-fi author who got famous for setting an abortion clinic on fire to prove a point or something. He used to spend most of his day on Twitter bashing the President of the United States and getting fucked with by Reddit's finest collective of schizophrenics and drunks, r/Opie and Anthony. But since the day I started this channel, there has been only one constant. One thing that countless social media purges, one thing that the death of Reddit, one thing that even a global pandemic couldn't change, and that is the undeniable fact that Patrick S. Tomlinson is a humorless, fat Soilinson loser who wastes all his time fighting with haters online and giving shallow hot takes on politics instead of trying to patch things up with his cheating ex-wife so he can have some connection with his stupid family he abandoned. People in the highest levels of government are coming for people, having fun on the internet, and bullying a tubby little idiot who can't stop escalating the situation. Remember my first criticism of him? It was that he can't stop escalating. Well, over the last 2.5 years, he claims it's gotten as high as it possibly can. It's so absurd. You could have left them alone, and they were just leaving mean comments on your stupid site and calling you fat. They were making fun of your books. Now you're taking it to Congress, and they're still fucking with you. Yeah, that guy. The man embroiled in nearly a 5-year-long war at this point with the brave men and women of r/Opie and Anthony, a defunct subreddit for a long since cancelled and forgotten radio show. The man who would try to sue the internet and bring Congress along for the ride. What in the world has Patrick been up to? Well, I think it's at this point in the video where I need to introduce you to a new character in this story. Let's meet the last real car guy, Torque Wheeler.
My name is Torque Wheeler. My father was a traveling salesman for Lucas Oil, and my mother hand-stitched custom leather interiors for a lowrider shop in Riverside, California. I was conceived on the bench seat of a 32,
douche coupe
rat rod at a drive-in showing of American Graffiti, and I'm here to teach you how to maintain your car.
So yeah, apparently when he's not arguing with pests, which he still does, by the way, here's a 3-hour-long argument he had just with just one of the pests on New Year's Eve of all days. But when he's not doing that, he's giving out car advice under the name Torque Wheeler now. Some genius on Kiwi Farms discovered this when Pat used a Torque Wheeler quote verbatim in a conversation, and yeah, that's certainly something. At least it's a healthy, creative outlet. But Pat doesn't hold a monopoly on creativity. Let's catch up with the other side of this conflict. A community so toxic Josh Moon refused to house them after they were booted off of Cloudflare, the Opie and Anthony Reddit forums. Damn, Mueller. You're a downright spooky individual. You know that? Spooky. But since I last talked about Pat, his popularity as a target of criticism and mockery has continued to expand and grow more mainstream, past the absolute forbidden mountains of bile that God forgot, known as r/Opie Anthony, past the autistic gnome forests of Kiwi Farms and into the light of Z-list former television puppet voice guy Jim Florentine's podcast.
So this 42-year-old man post. Anyway, happy 42nd to me. Already opened prezzies and gotten dozens of messages from friends and family. Dinner later. You mean you're going to have dinner later? That's good that you put that in there, because I bet you a lot of people were wondering. I go, hey, it's his 42nd birthday. I wonder if he's going to have dinner later. When is he going to have dinner? Is he going to have it at 5 o'clock? Is he going to have it at 8 o'clock? It's good that he put that in there. Are you going to say, going to brush your teeth before you go to bed? You left that out. You left out that, you're going to watch the NBA playoffs later, too. Why don't you put that in there, too? You're a 42-year-old man. You're wishing happy birthday to yourself. You already opened prezzies and gotten dozens of messages from friends and family. How fucking lonely is this man that has to let everyone know and kind of brag that he's getting presents? He's getting dozens of messages from friends and family that it's birthday. That's what everybody does. It shows up on your Facebook page. Hey, it's this guy's fucking birthday. So you go, hey, happy birthday if you know him. That's it.
So what big revelations did 2022 bring? Well, wherever Patrick goes, there's going to be legal controversy, and this one might be the biggest one. The forums managed to dig up an absolutely shocking revelation. Patrick S. Tomlinson's patio fence is not up to city code. Holy fucking shit. This pig, this fucking monster, look at that fence. Just look at it. Oh, but it's fine now. A reinspection of the fence proved it was fine. Come on, boys. I know there's such a thing as a slow news day, but you gotta give me something to work with. And how about this? Patrick S. Tomlinson's high school report card, proving that despite claiming to have been in gifted and talented programs throughout high school, he was more than likely there seeking sanctuary from the retard police, seeking to put him in retard stocks and pelt him with retarded tomatoes. How do you get a D in problem solving? Actually, now with 2020 hindsight, that one kind of makes sense. Now, I know that's probably not what you're here for. Last time we left off on a cliffhanger, Pat was coming for you.
I'm coming for you.
And would you believe it? A court actually allowed him extra time in March of 2021 for discovery to find the real names linked to the IP addresses and pseudonyms of the people who had been tormenting him.
Case number 21 CV 500, Patrick S. Tomlinson versus John Doe's. Appearances.
Good morning, Judge. Attorney Nicole Ways for plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor, and Brinson Rest on behalf of the plaintiff as well. But at this point, yes, we are still involved in discovery. We have sent several subpoenas out to different platforms, including internet service providers, domain registrars, and at this point, we have only received dummy account information. So my client foresees having to conduct additional discovery based on the dummy account information. We get fake email addresses, fake names, but we do have IP addresses that we believe that we can ultimately use to identify the defendants.
Well, this case is premised on defamation, so here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I would ask you to be mindful of the requirement that there's a limitation on which time to serve, and that may be impacted by your inability to get the information, but I'm making no decisions on any of that. So just so you're aware that there are some complicating factors regarding time limit between filing and serving. Now, that may be mitigated by the fact that you don't have that information. You'll bring that to my attention to show that there's an exception, hopefully. You mentioned some federal implications. As long as you believe that those federal laws would be meaningful in a state lawsuit, that's something, again, you're going to have to demonstrate to me. And I'm not saying this out of hand. I'm going to defer to you to exercise what you believe is the appropriate vehicle to keep this lawsuit going. So be it. So tell me, Mr. Resto and Ms. Ways, what kind of scheduling do you want at this point? I can set it over for a status date in contemplation of you filing something. But how much time do you think you need to file something?
Would the court be open to a follow-up conference on the 26th of April, which would align with the 90-day deadline? And at that point, we would have a motion to authorize filed for the specific discovery that I am referencing.
I would suggest you don't wait till that close to the deadline, because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And by the way, I don't do that kind of scheduling. I'll ask my clerk Winston next time. So I suspect that with concerns about the 90 days, which I have some legitimate concerns about, I'm mindful that you're going to give me some information to say, Judge, here's something else that's going to allow us to continue. So let's look for something that's a tad earlier than April 26th. So, Madam Clerk, do you have something, maybe a week? I don't know. Look, I'm out of my lane. Let me go off the record. What kind of dates we got, Nyla?
And finally, last year, the story came to a conclusion.
So, I've just been watching this case, and recently, he dropped it voluntarily, which means one thing. He ran out of money. And from what I understand, his lawsuit was actually funded by the Sci-Fi Writers Guild. And for whatever reason, they've been taking their member dues and giving it to Tomlinson to fund this stupid-ass fucking lawsuit, which has no doubt racked up more than 6 figures of charges to the Sci-Fi Writers Guild on behalf of Tomlinson. And he owes the owner of Opie and Anthony Forums $23,000. Let me get the exact number, because the number is a meme with them, and I want to say the exact number so that I can be cool and hip with the other crowd out there. He owes Quasi, the Opie and Anthony Forum owner, $23,739 and 25 cents. So a quarter on top of that. $23,739.25 in legal fees to Quasi, and it's unknown how if he will be able to pay this money back to Quasi. So he's basically fucked, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer person, because much like Nadir, I really get power and dominance, like control freak, serious mental illness control freak vibes from this guy.
Well, if you didn't find that satisfying enough, to talk about the events as they actually occurred, as well as some of Pat's other legal controversies over this past year, I had to get help. As much as I enjoy putting on my journalist hat, I would need help of a real bona fide investigative journalist, so I turned to Josiah Munoz of the Huffington Post. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it is because at the start of these legal proceedings, Josiah was one of the many journalists to cover this story.
Well, I apologize then if some of these questions are a bit repetitive, but my first...
I expect I'll be going through the story more than once. So.
Okay. All right. Well, then my first question to you is, how has this group of people on the internet, on ONA forums, affected your life outside of the internet? Let's start there.
And after days of calls, hours of recordings, it would turn out that Josiah Munoz of the Huffington Post, if that is his real name, was actually much like every other person in Pat's life, just a troll fucking with him mercilessly.
That's why you're doing this on a Saturday.
Doing a 20-minute prank call?
That's why you're doing this on a Saturday night. Because you have no life. You have no one to go to. You have no one who cares about you. You have
Dude, you're
no
fucking
one who
deranged.
wants to be with you. And I do. So guess what? We're just going to go ahead and talk.
And you're going to get fucked in the ass by your wife.
You never had anything to say. No, child.
Yeah, you will.
No, child.
You like to get fucked in the ass by your wife.
No,
yeah,
little baby child.
Yeah.
No, child.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
believe in your
there
delusions
you
because
go.
it's all you have left.
No,
in
that's
this
something
world.
you said, Patrick.
And I
like to
am
get
going
fucked
to
in the
take
ass.
those from you too.
You're gonna
Good
take
night,
what?
you fucking abject coward.
You're a
Jesus
fucking fat faggot.
No, I'm not. It's
Yeah,
not.
you are.
That's simply untrue. No, it's simply untrue, baby doll. It's just not a true statement. It's a delusion you hold.
I caught up with him very briefly to ask some questions about the legal proceedings against the head fag at the Opie and Anthony Mansion, Quasi, and just general lore that I may have missed, starting with what the mood was like before and after the verdict.
When Patrick first filed his lawsuit, a lot of people deleted their accounts immediately, and people were everybody knew that like the lawsuit was going to fail, but a lot of people were afraid that they're going to get doxxed or that they're going to have to hire an attorney. So that fear is obviously gone, and now that it's over, I think people have just become a lot more brazen about what they do to Patrick, and obviously now there are a lot more Patrick Tomlinson followers. So nice Streisand effect, stupid.
What some of the consequences were.
First of all, we now know for a fact that the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, which is a charity according to the IRS, funded Patrick's lawsuit entirely. So there are obviously a lot of tax consequences to that puts their status as a charity into question. And also, Patrick has to report all of the money he received from them as income. So you have to pay close to $30,000 in taxes just to the IRS. So that's on top of what he owes Quasi. So if he owes Quasi 40-something thousand, in total he's in the hole for 70-something thousand if you include the taxes that he legally has to pay to the IRS.
How far will the members of the board actually go to mess with Pat?
We don't do anything illegal. We're certainly not the ones swatting him. We don't send him death threats. We don't threaten any kind of violence or do anything super illegal. I think some people do tiptoe the gray area in contact forms and funeral pages. That's the worst of the worst that people are going to do. But beyond that, nothing physical and certainly no police pranks or anything like that. He's admin of the forum left a pretty interesting comment on one of the swatting threads, which is that he's swatting himself not necessarily to frame any of us, but more so that journalists will take his story seriously and write articles about us, and he can then take those articles to internet service providers in the hopes that he can shut down the forum.
I also asked about another court appearance by Pat where he was seeking a restraining order from a board member named Andrew.
Some guy named Andrew Nadolsky, who lives in Indianapolis, got drunk one night and started texting Patrick, you're a fat faggot, whatever. And he basically said, Patrick did his typical, escalation and saying, I could kick your ass, whatever. So Andrew Nadolsky actually drove to Hooligans that night, and he texted Patrick and said, "Hey, I'm here at Hooligans, bitch." And Patrick basically, I don't remember what he did. I think he just blocked him. But while Nadolsky was at the bar, he was talking to the patrons about Patrick and calling him a faggot and stuff like that. And at the end of the night, he bought everybody around. Yeah, after he was done, he bought everybody a round of drinks, I think. And then he paid with his credit card. He left a nice tip. And I think he slept in the parking lot in a car and then drove home the next day. And that was that. And then Patrick filed his restraining order against him,
which ended with this hilarious verdict.
I think what we basically have here is someone contacting someone they don't like on the internet and saying, "I don't like you, I think you're bad." And the person who he contacted basically said, "Okay, if you want to fight, let's fight, and I'm going to beat the crap out of you."
That is not what occurred.
That's what I interpret that text to mean.
No, sir, that is not what occurred.
Sir, that's what I interpret the text to mean. I think basically There was, again, well, I don't understand why you reach out and do this. This makes no sense. This is one of the, I'll be quite blunt, this is one of the dumber things I've heard in this courtroom, Mr. Dawes. To some extent, what we really have here is a very limited contact. I don't like you. Do you want to fight? I'll kick your ass. You accept the invitation.
Sir, I did not.
And for some mind-numbing reason, he comes here for the fight, which thank God doesn't happen.
Sir, I did not invite him to come here. I did not invite to fight him. That did not occur.
Sir, what you said was, I won't need 911. I think...
That is after he had already threatened me.
I understand that.
That is after he had already said he was going to come and confront me. I did not say I wanted to fight him.
I think basically what happened is, someone offered to fight, someone accepted the fight, and God, it didn't happen.
No, that is not what occurred.
On that limited basis, I'm not going to grant harassment injunction.
And most importantly, what is really up with Patrick's fence?
Patrick's fence was broken and dilapidated for many, many years. And people on the forums that he supposedly never reads used to make fun of him for it. So one day he decided to fix the fence, but he put in a new fence, but he put the fence in backwards, and he posted a picture of it on Twitter. And to Dan's credit, Dan actually reported him to like the local Milwaukee like zoning authority or whatever. And he said like, hey, this person is like put his fence in backwards and yada, yada, yada. And somebody actually, like an inspector actually, yeah, this only happened because he posted it on Twitter because he's a retard who needs to take pictures of everything that happens in his life. But Dan reported him, and someone actually showed up, an inspector, and said, yeah, your fence is backwards. Here's a fine, and it needs to be fixed within this amount of time. And about a month later, he actually went to the Milwaukee Municipal Building and successfully convinced them that this report was made by stalkers and you should, get rid of this violation. And the city of Milwaukee actually cleared him. So his fence is still backwards, but he doesn't have to fix it and he doesn't have to pay the fine.
And that about wraps it up for this volume of Catching Up with Pat. Huge thank you to Josiah for coming on, all of the Opie and Anthony Reddit forums for keeping up their quixotic quest to destroy a tubby failure, particularly Kadan, who despite his young age and the tragic car accident he was involved in, continues to maintain a meticulous archive of the best material on the forums. Part 2 will be coming soon because we've still got a lot to cover. I want to get into Pat's social life, his neighbors, his sports bar, his personal friends, some of whom may soon become bigger lolcows than Pat himself. And I want to sell a house, but I have to explain that in the next one. In the meantime, keep fucking that chicken.
In it for